to me, the big takeaway was like as I went to bed on Saturday, you're reminded there's so much MMA, there's so much UFC. There's by Thursday we're going to be talking about Grasso and Shevchenko, and in a few weeks' time we'll be talking about Abu Dhabi, and then it'll be New York, and this will feel like ages ago. But you have to take a second and just recognize a few things off the top. Let us recognize just the timeline of events, the things that had to break in order for not only this result to happen, but in order for this fight to actually happen. Number one, Israel Adesanya has to go on a long streak as UFC middleweight champion. And to everyone out there who's trying to use this result to shape his legacy or his resume, miss me with that talk, because all you have to do is look at the resume and look at the people he beat. And not only did he beat them, he lapped the majority of the division. In baseball, there's something where there's like a theory out there when a pitcher goes through the lineup once, twice, and then gets to the third time, people start to catch up to him. And he was in that position. He was fighting guys twice. And now people were talking about him fighting Robert Whittaker a third time. So what happened on Saturday doesn't take anything away from that. But what it does is we got to a position come this summer because of his activity, which we'll get to more on that in a second, but because of his title defenses and because he loses the belt and then comes back and regains the title, where you go down the line 1 through 5 and he has fought everyone once, if not twice. He has, obviously Dricus was there, and Dricus was the guy who was supposed to fight. More on him in a second as well. But Whittaker 2 wins, Cannonier win, Vettori 2 wins. After Strickland, you have Costa win, Derek Brunson win. So here we are in a position where they're coming to Sydney. They sell the card out, but they need a main event, and no one is available. They want to do DDP versus Israel on September 9th. DDP beats Robert Whittaker. He has stamped his ticket. He deserves that shot, but he's not ready to go. 2 months' time, not enough time to get ready for Izzy. Now I can't wait to talk to him at some point. I would love to talk to him and ask him how he was feeling watching that, because I wonder if in the back of his mind he was thinking, I should have just taken this fight, given what we saw from Izzy on Saturday. UFC, don't let them tell you, like I saw Dana White at the press conference on Saturday saying, like, this is why I say you can't judge a fight. First of all, he says that when people rag on the cards, not the specific main events or specifically how lopsided a main event may be odds-wise. It's when people talk about like the depth of cards. Judging a fight and predicting a fight are two different things, in my opinion. Judging a fight card is much different than saying this is going to be a one-sided fight. And everyone was saying this was going to be a one-sided fight. And oh, by the way, at the top of that list was the UFC, who told Izzy's team that they didn't want to book this fight because they felt like it was too one-sided and they couldn't, in good conscience, sell this fight to the public. They tried to book Yuri versus Alex instead. They tried to book DDP versus Izzy first and foremost. Then they went to Yuri versus Alex. Then they talked about other title fights as well of the guys who are available. And in the end, no one was available, so they went with Strickland. Just go to Strickland's Twitter over the last month, and you'll see that he was losing hope. He was losing patience, and it seemed as though the opportunity may pass him by. But in the end, they went with the sure thing, which was Izzy fighting close to home, and Strickland was developing a fan base and a following. And if you go back, I think I said it on this show, when the fight was announced, I remember it was on a Wednesday night in late July. When the fight was announced, the majority of the replies that I saw on Twitter weren't, this is a one-sided fight, this is a bullshit fight, this is going to be a beatdown. It was, let's go, Sean. Sean's the champion we deserved. Sean's the champion for our generation. Whatever it was, there was a lot of support. I was personally surprised. I didn't think that Sean had necessarily haters, but I didn't know that so many people were trying to back him and were feeling some sort of way, in a positive way, about him. And so the fight gets booked, and now here we have this short runway to the fight, and it's getting booked in like early August, I think it was. It was like a month out. And the fight happens in early September. And so then we get to fight week. It creeps up on us after all the hoopla in Boston. And it just felt like from the beginning, Sean Strickland owned the week. From his performance on Embedded, where he's, just loving life. He's saying, all these things about, this is just a fight. If I lose, no big deal. I go back. Oh, it's just a belt. It's a metal thing. He's with a girlfriend, Sean Strickland, who you wouldn't think would be the guy walking around hiking on fight week, holding hands and doing the schmoopy sounds and, doing the nose thing and the kiss. He's like a regular guy in love. It's a beautiful thing. And I mentioned on Saturday night, oh, wow, I didn't think that Sean would be the guy walking into the arena, holding hands with the girlfriend or walking with the girlfriend. It was like, don't you watch Embedded? Just because you're on fucking Embedded with the girlfriend doesn't mean you're walking into the arena. Two different things. Yes, I was aware that he has a girlfriend. I saw it all week long, but it surprised. It was a bit of a change. We have not seen this from him before, but he felt comfortable. He felt happy. He felt at peace. But then throughout the week, you start to see Sean Strickland's the fan favorite in Australia. And I know Israel isn't from Australia. I know he's from New Zealand. And I know that there are people who don't like him. And I know that there's a bit of a rivalry, a sporting rivalry. They're not the same country. But it wasn't just they were oh, let's just pick Sean. He was getting massive pops, massive reactions, positive reactions. And he was eating it up and he was showing up with the hat. So you start to think wow, Sean's really owning the moment. He's really rising to the occasion. The moment isn't getting to him. That's what everyone said prior to the Alex Pereira fight, right? Oh, he crumbled, he froze. No, he was cool as can be, calm as can be, seemed to, enjoy the press conference, seemed to enjoy the spotlight, and he showed up. And I saw some people saying oh, the walkout, he looked nervous. In retrospect, that was just a focused guy, ready to shock the world. No distractions, no issues, nothing like that. And so we see that side of things, and Sean Strickland going in there to shock the world, even though despite all of that, no one was really giving him a chance. And then you start, and this is all with the benefit of hindsight. I fully acknowledge that. Then you start to look at Izzy. And I think there are a few things at play here. And let me be very clear, as I bring these up, this is not taking away from anything that happened in the fight, because I'll get to the fight in a second. But there's no denying Israel's been very active. Dare I say, in retrospect, too active. That was his fourth fight since July of last year, since the Cannonier fight. Cannonier in July, Pereira in November, Pereira in April, and then this one. It's his fourth fight. Big time fights. And oh, by the way, in that stretch, he got knocked out, lost, had to build himself back up. So a lot of pressure, a lot of stress, a lot of miles on those tires. That's number one. Number two, is it possible that he took Sean Strickland too lightly? It's possible. He asked for this fight. It was supposed to be DDP. DDP couldn't take the fight. He wanted Sean Strickland, and everyone around him was saying, the fans, we were all saying that this was going to be one of his easier title defenses. We were talking about the Khamzat fight. We were talking about, oh, this is the bridge to get to UFC 300, where Khamzat's going to fight Izzy for the belt. Strickland had other plans. Paulo Costa may have other plans as well. But is it possible that he took him too lightly? I know this. I was talking to a member of his team, and apparently Izzy has one guy on his team. His name escapes me, and he's the video guru. He's the guy that watches all the tape. He's the guy that breaks everything down. And that person was saying to the whole team, this is not a fight you can sleep on. This guy is going to be dangerous. This guy is not someone that we can just go half-ass, 50%. This is a serious threat. And that guy, whoever he may be, I will get his name. That guy was right. I wonder if he was a little too distracted all weekend. There was a lot going on. I see him on Twitter. He's responding to everyone. That's par for the course when it comes to Israel. But you do wonder just what was going on, right? A lot of title defenses, a lot going on, a lot of distractions. And then you get to the fight, and the fight is all right, it's starting off, first round. You're not quite sure who wins. And then with about 30 to 40 seconds left, Sean Strickland throws the right hand of one's dreams. And what Sean did, and this was talked about a lot throughout the fight, it was nothing flashy. It was nothing spectacular. It was just freaking effective. It was perfect. 1-2s, 1-2s. It was clear Izzy was trying to counter-strike, but what he was doing was he was throwing the two before Izzy was able to throw his counter-strike. And so that's how he caught him with that right hand. He throws the jab, and then he throws the right before Izzy is able. You saw Izzy trying to load up, and he catches him. It was quick. It was crisp. And when he rocked him, you thought there for a second it might be over. Up against the cage. He ran out of time, and I wondered if he tired himself out. In my opinion, and according to the three judges who got it perfect, Izzy wins the second round. But that might have been as much about Sean just trying to like, fill up the gas tank again, because you saw 3, 4, and 5 were completely different rounds in the second, as opposed to Izzy doing something spectacularly different in that second round. This was a one-sided victory for Sean Strickland. And that's why I do believe this is one of, if not the biggest upsets in the history of the UFC. If Sean Strickland would have knocked out Israel in the first round, I would have felt less strongly about that, because you can always chalk a knockout victory, like Matt Serra versus GSP, which up until Saturday night I thought was number one, as like, holy shit, he caught him, the guy never recovered, and that's that. If they fight again, as those two did, the world, the universe will rectify itself. This was a systematic drubbing, 5 rounds. It was never close. It was never close. Even in the last 30 seconds, Strickland is yelling at Izzy in his face, almost begging him to hit him, and there's nothing coming. Even going into the 5th round, you think, okay, now he's going to pour it on. Now he's going to pour it on. He's going to step on that gas, and he's going to freaking give him everything he's got. He's the better striker. He's the kickboxer. He's the longtime champion. And there was nothing really there. And it was all simple striking. Who would have thought? Without a single takedown defense. He didn't shoot once. Strickland did not shoot once. He beat Israel Adesanya, had his own game, was striking and defense. A lot was said of the Philly shell stance that he had, which is essentially like he's walking him down. He's walking Izzy down the entire fight. The entire fight. It's just Sean hunting down Izzy. The entire fight. Izzy's back is towards the cage, and he's walking him down like this. Left hand just, on his stomach, right hand cocked here, and then he's throwing jabs, and then he's throwing rights. And that's it. Shoulder in front, and he's defending himself perfectly. He's beating Izzy to the punch. He was like freaking Bernard Hopkins out there. Sean Strickland, who, let's be honest, is a solid middleweight, 5th rank, 6th rank. But no one saw this coming. Dana White even said it himself. He didn't say, I don't even think Sean Strickland saw this coming. He alluded to that as well. Stunning. An absolute shocker, because it wasn't just a flash knockout. Because he didn't just drop him with that big right. He kept coming. He didn't stray away. Now, I say he stuck to the game plan. It did seem like Eric Nixick, who was one of the stars of the evening as well. Eric Nixick deserves all the flowers in the world. And then if he leads Francis Ngannou to victory next month in Riyadh, I mean, put him down as coach of the decade, let alone coach of the year. Both he and Sean are the front runners for coach and fighter of the year, and maybe even more, upset of the year, most improved, all that stuff. But what a performance out of Nixick, right? I mean, you have to know how to speak to your fighter, speak his language, get him going, get him riled up. You don't talk to Francis the way in which you talk to Sean, but you saw that. Those snippets were gold. The one thing he did say that Sean didn't really do was like, let's get some takedowns in there. He didn't need them. He didn't need the takedowns. It was unbelievable to watch, because I don't think truly anyone saw this coming. They thought, all right, maybe he could pull this off. He could knock him out. He could do something spectacular if the stars align. But to win, the vast majority, 4 out of 5 rounds, and the second round, it wasn't like that was super one-sided against them. It was shocking. And then to see him own everything, and to see the reaction, like when they announced him as the winner, the place exploded. And then even when he shows up to the press conference, he's joking, he's making light of the situation. And what I thought was so fascinating was he was telling Izzy what to do from like a marketing standpoint. I don't know if you guys saw, but he's like, all he had to do was embrace the Australians. All he had to do was say X, Y, and Z. And you're like, wow, Sean Strickland isn't as, he's not as dense as he sometimes makes it out to be. Now, of course, is he rough around the edges? Does he say things that go too far? Absolutely. Can he be offensive? But I'll tell you guys this. Sean Strickland speaks to the UFC fan of today. And it's not just in Australia, and it's not just here in the United States. You're on the wrong side of the debate if you are saying that this is the worst thing possible for the UFC, that this is a nightmare for the UFC. You may think that from afar, if you're just some regular guy being like, wait a second, the guy who's talking about women should be in the kitchen, that's the new UFC middleweight champion. That's good for the business. Let me tell you what, this is the best nightmare. This is a beautiful nightmare for the UFC. This is not their worst nightmare. Number one, company guy. He's going to take whatever fight they give him. He's not going to push back, at least not now. He like, this is perfect. This is a soldier through and through. So from a business standpoint, not bad. He's not going to push. He's not going to negotiate. He's not going to fight. He's not going to command massive dollars. You see him talking about his Hyundai and oh, I'll just fight whomever they want, etc. But number two, say what you will, he clearly speaks to the audience. They are clearly behind him. They believe that this is the kind of athlete that we want in 2023. He tells it like it is. He's unfiltered. He isn't someone who speaks in cliche. He's not part of the machine. And they freaking love him. It's an unbelievable thing. And he says things like, this thing doesn't make me happy. I don't know what makes me happy. And he has these moments of vulnerability. It reminds me of the first time that we had him on the show. I think it was October. I think it was 2 years ago when we had him on. I think he's been on twice. Could be 3 times. The first time, I enjoyed that conversation thoroughly. That's when we talked about his upbringing, the trials and tribulations, the stuff that you would say like, wow, this is a little intense, but I appreciated him opening up. The second time it got a little crazy and you know, a little uncomfortable and offensive and all that stuff. And I was like, I don't really enjoy this as much. If we could go back to the first guy, and even the guy that we saw at the press conference where he's talking about, I'm just happy that the universe has a place for people like me. I'm telling you, there's a lot of people out there that relate to this. The misfits out there, people are like, this guy speaks to me. This guy's one of us. If he could do it, I could do it. And for whatever reason, at least online, it seems like Izzy wasn't connecting with the people like that. And so then you see this, you know, this reaction, not only in the arena, but online. And it's an unbelievable reality that we're now living in. But this is the sport. Something for everyone, highs and lows, good guys and bad guys. And I'm just blown away by not only the performance, but the amount of things that had to happen for this to become a reality. And so now you talk about what's next. I mean, what's next is just as fascinating. Immediate rematch, time off, Drickus out there, Robert out there, Jared out there, Khamzat out there, Paulo out there. I mean, and there's probably 2 or 3 more guys that I'm forgetting about. It is wide open. I can't wait to see how this whole middleweight picture, the next 6 to 12 months at 185 are going to be fascinating. Absolutely fascinating to watch. Let's get the temperature of the guys in the back. GC was on the watch party. New York Rick as well. New York Rick. Sean Strickland is the UFC middleweight champion. You've had almost 2 days to digest this. Not only digest that reality, but again, it was a one-sided beatdown.
Yeah,
it was never close. It was never close. Your feelings on this Monday afternoon?
I still can't believe it. But while you were speaking and talking about how he connects with people, it sunk in. It kind of hit home, and it's how I feel. Is like this felt like the outcome that MMA fans kind of wanted. This felt like what the majority of the fan base was looking for, some kind of shakeup, and now it's here. And there's exciting times ahead for the middleweight division. There's a lot of different options for both Sean Strickland and Israel Adesanya and other contenders. So yeah, I'm just the performance was amazing. Sean Strickland deserves all the credit in the world. Coach Eric Nixick deserves all the credit in the world. But I can't help but already start thinking about the future. I can't help but already start thinking about like what's going to be ahead. And I'm excited about it.
GC?
Yeah, shocked. Can't still having a hard time processing just how crazy it is just because of the way that he won. I mean, you said it. Like, had he just finished him in the first round, it would be like, damn, man, yeah, that's the sport. Like, he caught him. He did what he had to do, and he finished him in the first round. Like, insane stuff. Still would have been, jaw-dropping, shocking. But the way that he did that over 25 minutes, not going for a single takedown, just a strictly striking match, is just insane, man. It's insane.
It's one of the most, like I said, it's one of the most shocking, one of the most stunning results in UFC history. And the more I think about it, I never thought that we'd be able to trump, in my opinion, Matt Serra GSP. But I really do feel like this is bigger because of 2 reasons. Number one, GSP was a new champion at the time. He didn't have the longevity. He didn't have the title defense. He didn't have the clout in the sport just yet. Number 2, that happened in a flash. He rocked him. He stopped him. The fight was over. Flip side of things, Izzy has the longevity. Izzy has the defenses. He's been. I don't care about anyone who's talking. Like, just go to the resume. Everyone there is still a top tenner. The only guy who isn't is Rob Wilkinson, who just won the PFL championship a year ago. All right, that's the only like lesser guy, or the only guy that's outside of the UFC off the top of my head. And then not only that, it wasn't a flash knockdown. It wasn't a knockout. It wasn't a first round finish. It was a 5-round beatdown. And he was what, a 7-1 underdog? And I thought it should have been bigger. 6-1. I thought it should have been bigger. And he goes in there and he didn't out wrestle him like Chael out wrestled Anderson at UFC 117. He beat him at his own game. I think this might be bigger. I think this might be bigger.
At the end, in the 5th round, when some people, could have had it 2-2, I had it 3-1 going into the 5th round. Like, while there was still a fight alive, him to come out and just continue to just dominate in that 5th round. And then at the end, when he's screaming at Adesanya, he's just like, you want your chance, you got it right now. Go for it. Go for it. And Adesanya just kept moving and just kind of laughed and just let it go to the horn. Like, I was like, wow. Like, he really just dismantled this dude. It's just like, I really am having a hard time wrapping my head around it. It's crazy.
I disagree from the perspective that who Matt Serra and GSP were at the time and who Matt Serra and GSP ultimately ended up to become. I cannot put it ahead.
Is it fair to do the become thing? Because you have to, like, we don't know how the story plays out for Izzy and Sean. Sean can lose his next
But
fight.
I have the benefit of hindsight for that one.
Mhm.
If this ages differently, sure, great. We can rehab this conversation. But for now, it is not for me.
Close?
In addition to, I think there's a bit of a fallacy happening with the idea that the decision is more definitive than a finish. It's not. I get the logic. I get the idea, like, dominating from bell to bell. But no, a knockout is still supreme. And Matt Serra knocking out GSP is still the number one for me. Now, I'll have a conversation about it topping Holm over Rousey. I'll definitely put it in that caliber.
that one,
have that convo.
I mean, that one over time, like, we were
also
completely wrong on that one.
And also, Holly Holm heading in, I think was considered by many, even though the odds wouldn't reflect it, considered by many to be a very dangerous opponent for Ronda Rousey. So I will say it's in that combo. It's definitely up there. It does not become number one for me, but the fact that it's even discussed in this conversation tells what happened on Saturday night. That is unassailably one of the craziest knockouts, one of the greatest upsets in sports history, let alone just MMA, let alone just UFC specifically.
So I was just going to say, you also talked about the activity of Adesanya lately. I mean, Strickland actually has won more fights since July of last year, and 2 of those he lost. Like, the fact that just less than 9 months ago, he was losing a split decision to Jared Cannonier in the Apex, and now he's strung off 3 wins in 2023, and he's the middleweight champion of the world is mind-blowing. Mind-boggling. Can't even... If you had told me on December 18th, the day after he lost to Jared Cannonier, I'd be like, not happening.
You would have told me on January 18th after he beat Nasruddin Imavov, and
at light heavyweight too.
It's a good point, but also I don't think you can compare, like, the level of preparation and stress that goes into fighting the Pereiras and the Cannoniers on internet. Like, he's just fighting massive fights during that stretch. I get what you're saying. The wear and tear is all the same.
Yeah.
But Izzy's schedule as a champion, I mean, he's been the most active champion over the last couple of years. I personally think he needs time off, and I want to ask you guys about the future in a moment, but I brought up 4 things that I think came into play here, and I know if people listen to this, they're saying, like, I'm not taking any, there is nothing that can be said or done to take anything away from Strickland and his performance and his team's performance in terms of getting him prepared. But I do think 4 things were at play. Whether or not you want to use those to break down the fight or make sense of the fight is to your discretion. I want to ask you guys if you agree with any of these things. Number 1, the activity. Did that come into play on Saturday? Number 2, did he take him lightly? Did that come into play on Saturday? Number 3, distractions. Did he seem distracted last week? Did that come into play? And number 4, I wonder if he ever recovered from the first round. I feel like the first round changed everything, and he didn't quite recover. Are any of those, and again, if you want to use those as reasons for the loss, I think even if he didn't recover, Sean was the better fighter on the night, 1,000%. But in talking about this fight and this result, can we point to any of those 4 things? Or was it just Sean was the better fighter and then that was it?
I'm going to zag a little bit. I would not factor in any of those, and here's why. Because of who Israel Adesanya is and because of who Israel Adesanya has shown to be, I don't think those are viable explanations or excuses for him. And let me explain further. So you could make those kind of, he's talked about times where he's gone into the cage at less than 100% but still performed. He's talked about the mental hurdles he has to overcome to fight somebody like Alex Pereira, who has 2 wins in kickboxing and a win over him in MMA, to come back. And people might say, hey, he came back too soon for that rematch, and he was able to get it done in the most impressive fashion you possibly can. He is the type of fighter who remains active, and I think it's one of his weapons. I think it's one of his skills. He remains sharp. And so I don't think he would make those excuses. So I have to think that because those are the things that he's been able to weaponize and use in a positive direction, I can't now, because the outcome has been different, point to them and say that they were the detriment to him. His activity is something that makes him dangerous. His sharpness and being in there and getting.
But at some point, that was going to catch up to him.
Maybe, and maybe this was the one. But I can't see it as a plus, which I have to this point, and now all of a sudden turn the gun and turn the sword and say, actually, that's what ends up harming him. It has allowed him to get in these championship moments and allowed him to build up these rounds and allowed him to have that experience that was something that we were counting on in the fight against Sean Strickland. The last one, the one that you mentioned about did he recover from round 1, that's the one where I don't know the answer to, but would be willing to give some stock to, right? If he comes out and says, look, after round 1, I was completely different, you have to kind of trust that. Without hearing from Izzy, it's so difficult. And as we saw in his press conference, he kind of made no excuses, which is very much his way. Made no excuses, passed the baton to Eugene, and then kind of moved on from there. So I thought heading into this, on Israel Adesanya's worst night and Sean Strickland's best night, Israel Adesanya still wins that fight. I was wrong. Many people were wrong. Even Israel Adesanya perhaps himself was wrong. I can't even get to that level where I'm gonna look at what Izzy did wrong as opposed to what Sean Strickland did right, which was everything. Just incredible for performance. I'm blown away.
But yeah, I do think it is fair, GC, to say like Izzy had to play a part in this. Right? Like even Sean himself at the press conference was saying like, sometimes I was sitting there wondering, who is this
that he
guy?
Was fighting an amateur.
Yeah,
like, that's what he said. He was like, I can't believe what's happening here. The only one that I would not use the activity just because I know he's living the champ life and that's more difficult preparing for the Pereiras and everything like you said. But this was Strickland's 5th fight since July of last year, and he also fought just 2 months ago in July, had to fly across the world to do this one. Like, I wouldn't use that one. The only one I would use would be the last one. Did he ever recover? I don't know if he fully recovered or not, but I think that changed the way Adesanya viewed the fight. He may have not respected Sean's power, but to get dropped like that and then have 27 head strikes as the round's ending, I think it changed the way Adesanya was viewing the fight. Because, I mean, that was like, it really was like in Adesanya we've like never seen before. Like he was having next to no success, especially when it came to the championship rounds. So
yeah, he was attacking the leg. The leg kicks were getting checked. Like there was nothing going on.
Sean had a counter for everything he did. This is the part where I will be critical, and I think it happened within the fight. We've seen Israel Adesanya circling. We've seen Israel Adesanya on the back foot, and he's been good in that capacity. Sean Strickland was the aggressor, and Israel Adesanya was circling, looking for his opportunities, and we've seen him be successful at that style. He did it in the first fight with Alex Pereira for 4 rounds until ultimately it kind of came apart. There were points in that fight, in a first fight against Alex Pereira, there were points in the second fight against Alex Pereira where he was backed up to the cage and he decided that he was going to exchange in that firefight. He was going to plant his feet, and he was going to let the outcome be what the outcome was. He was going to get into a firefight with Alex Pereira, who was some of the best power we've ever seen in MMA in that middleweight division, and throw back. And he never quite did that in this fight. There wasn't a moment where he planted his feet and thought that he was going to get the better of a fiery fight with Sean Strickland, which I was stunned by. I was absolutely stunned, especially in round 5 when all the chips were on the table. Israel Adesanya in the 5th round was still circling. Like Sean Strickland had him on the back foot, and Israel Adesanya was still circling, perhaps looking for an opportunity in a different capacity. But there wasn't a moment where he sat down, bit on the mouthpiece, and thought that he had more skills than Sean Strickland in a technical firefight. And I was surprised to see it because we know that Israel Adesanya can win that against some of the guys who throw the heaviest leather that we've ever seen. I didn't know. I didn't know really what was going on in round 5. Now, you could say that could have happened earlier, but round 5 was the real definitive moment to me where I thought, wow, he just does not have answers. He does not have answers for what Sean Strickland is bringing to him. And all due respect and credit to Sean Strickland. What an absolute masterclass.
And the amazing thing is, like, look at the guys that Izzy has beaten. You know, Alex recently, Robert twice, Vittori, Derek Brunson,
Paulo Costa,
Kelvin
Gastelum, and like just based on his resume alone, what is Strickland in his last 7, 4-3? Like based on his resume alone, you say that Sean Strickland is the undisputed middleweight champion of the world. That's the craziest part about it. Like Sean Strickland versus Whitaker. How does that fight go? Sean Strickland.
I'm interested in it now.
Yeah,
but you wouldn't have been
Saturday. We saw Sean Strickland versus Jared Cannonier in December. And we know how that fight went. And so it's just an amazing reality that we're now living in. What about this reality? The fan reaction to him all week in Australia, the reaction to the and new, the reaction online, like you look at the UFC's YouTube channel and the comments and stuff like that. He was the babyface in this fight in Australia and around the world. Surprised, New York Rick?
I was surprised. I did not. Not that I didn't think Sean Strickland was popular. Not that I didn't believe that he had a vocal fan base. I just couldn't believe that a champion as accomplished as Israel Adesanya was now like the B-side to this title fight. And we have talked, many times on this show about like star power and who's a draw and who's this and who's that. Sean Strickland was carrying that card. Like Sean Strickland's attention, Sean Strickland. The things that he was saying in the press conferences, the things he was saying at Media Day, the open workout where he's sparring a fan, it was Sean Strickland who people were coming to see. And I can't say that I expected that, to be so vocal and to be so obvious that this was a Sean Strickland fight, more so than an Israel Adesanya fight. But yeah, just a perfect storm. I think Israel Adesanya and Sean Strickland are perfect foils for each other. And we saw what happened in terms of how they engaged in the press conference and trash talk, and then we saw what happened in the fight. It was a perfect storm, and couldn't have gone better for Sean Strickland. Just A+ aces across the board.
GC, you have your finger on the pulse. You're younger than us. You're a little less jaded than us. Are you surprised by this reaction?
Yeah, I would actually say no. Like, I mean, he has a pretty big backing. Like, if you're going on the online. In the online space. And then, yeah, I guess like Izzy isn't a hero in Australia. I mean, if you go back to the Whitaker fight, and it just felt like Strickland was there to embrace the Australians and kind of sell his side of the fight. Have to give him a tip of the hat for the Crocodile Dundee hat all week. I mean, getting a little local merch, that's class right there. So yeah, I really wouldn't say that I'm that surprised. I would say I am surprised that like the excitement for Sean Strickland, because like we talked about it, like it almost felt like at the beginning of the year, I remember people being like, oh great, another when he filled in on short notice against Imavov, they were like, oh great, another Apex main event with Sean Strickland, like it's just going to be a 25-minute jab fest and everything. And now here he is, like almost like a hero in the MMA world right now.
Crazy. Because I think he taps into something, and I think he speaks a certain language. He
says whatever he wants, man.
Yeah, but like he's speaking a certain like I joked last week that he's a walking For You column on Twitter. Like he's just like this mess of all the and I don't say that in a disparaging way, but you go on the For You timeline on Twitter and it's like street fight, politics, crazy cat video. Like he's just like all over the place. Like you watch the press conference, he's talking about shooting a dog, and he's talking about American. He's wearing a shirt that says my pronouns are Sean Strickland. Like he's tapping into everything that maybe young people are feeling in this country and around the world about the state of things, about the state of society, about the state of politics. He's tapping into it perfectly. And Some might say he goes over the line at times. Some might say he doesn't go over the line enough, that he doesn't say enough things. And so there are enough people out there who are like, fuck yeah, Sean Strickland, who shows up on this show with a AK-47 or whatever that was, and talks about like gender and the roles of women and politics and race and all this stuff. And he's like,
I think that's the biggest thing is a lot of people just say, fuck yeah, Sean Strickland.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like that's just like an all-encompassing view. Like,
it's a wild
it kind of
thing.
feels like, it actually kind of feels like both these fighters are like sort of like you love them or you hate them type thing. Like, I feel like there's not really many lukewarm takes on either of these guys in the main event.
That's a great call. That's a great call. Very polarizing. I think there's something obvious that we're kind of not acknowledging enough, in my opinion, which is him being a huge underdog, right? Most of these other fights against other competitors, we expect them to be closer. Now, do we expect Israel Adesanya to win most of them? Yes. But him being a huge underdog, to steal from the Ringer's Bill Simmons, there's a nobody believes in us at play here, right? Sean Strickland and his fans were counted out by everybody except for them. Like, conventional wisdom said Sean Strickland does not win this fight. The betting lines say Sean Strickland does not win this fight. The experts, Sean Strickland does not win this fight. They had something to rally behind. They had something to believe in, which was Sean Strickland is going to win this fight. And nobody believed it. Nobody believed it but them. You can see it in Chris Curtis's tweet after the fight, right? Like, he told everybody to shove it because nobody believed. And that is powerful. That is powerful in rallying people behind. So
that's a great point by you. Yeah, it's like the massive underdog mentality and going against a guy like Adesanya who, as popular as he is, he does have a strong contingent of haters. There are a lot of people out there that do not like Israel Adesanya. So when you combine that massive, massive underdog story, not just for this fight, but all of Sean Strickland's life, with him going against a guy like Adesanya, I mean, it's just like a perfect storm for a big backing and people being super stoked that he won.
He's the poster boy for people who may feel like they are being crapped on, who aren't getting opportunities. Like I said, misfits. Like when he talks about these things, when he talks about these things at the press conference, like, I'm just happy that there is a place for people like me in this world. And if it wasn't for this sport, I would have done some random act of violence. People can connect to that. And so it's a fascinating thing to watch. And what will also be fascinating is, where do we go from here at 185? Dana White at the press conference was asked about an immediate rematch, and he said yes. And it feels like they always go back to the well with the rematches. And I don't know if that is the smartest thing to do for not only the UFC, but for Israel as well. Like, I was surprised. Eugene Behrman at the post-fight press conference said, like, I would do the fight next weekend. And he's been on this show, remember, before the second Pereira fight, saying, I wish there was a little bit more time. And so Izzy has had a lot on his plate. He's been fighting a lot. He was rocked in the first round. I thought maybe he would come out, and maybe he was protecting him to a degree and saying what Izzy wanted to be said in that moment. But I thought he would say, like, let's give us a little bit more time. I don't think it's crazy to think that Israel's next fight will be for the belt, but I don't know if Sean's next fight will be against Izzy. And if I was managing Izzy, I would say, let's just chill, man. Let's chill. Like, take 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 months off. Take 12 months off, and come back as focused and as on point as ever. I don't know if going back to the well right off the bat is the answer. And then the question is, well, then who is it? You have Khamzat and Paulo coming up.
Before we go to that, can I ask one thing?
Sure.
Would many people, including you, I believe, have said the same thing after the Alex Pereira fight? The first one.
Going back to the well right away, or that soon?
That soon.
I mean,
same opponent, run it right back.
I had reservations. I'm the one that
And
always
he showed.
talks. I'm the one who always talks about when you do the immediate rematch and the guy who lost, like, it's very rare that the person who lost comes back and win. In recent memory, it's him and Amanda Nunes, but historically, that person loses.
It goes very well, very poorly,
yes,
usually. But he has shown he is that guy, right? And to me, I think it's him that determines that in the perspective that, like,
so if you're managing Izzy, are you campaigning for a February or March rematch? That's probably the timeline, right?
If I'm managing Izzy, he tells me which he wants, and I support it.
If you're Izzy, what do you do?
Man, I would rather see how it plays out. I would rather see what shakes out. What happens with Costa and Khamzat? What happens with DDP? Are they in a rush to get Sean Strickland booked right away? I would let it simmer a little bit to kind of see the landscape. But if ultimately it does shake out where it's Sean Strickland sometime early next year, only Israel Adesanya knows. But I would have full faith he seems to be the guy that has the faith in himself that he can hop right back in there.
The biggest difference right here, though, is the fight against Pereira. You know, he was up going into the 5th round, and then he ends up getting knocked out, and it's just like this was his first loss at middleweight too in the UFC, if I'm not mistaken. So it's just like the rematch, the Pereira fight
is his first loss.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. His first loss at middleweight in the UFC was the Pereira fight. He got knocked out in the 5th round after leading on the scorecards going into that one. It felt more warranted to have the immediate rematch. In this case, like, I mean, now he's 1-2 in his last 3 fights, and he's coming off like a 5-round drubbing, essentially. I don't know. To me, I feel like you go with someone else right off the bat.
Here's the other thing. Maybe you don't get another crack at Sean Strickland if you wait, right?
I know, but
maybe you don't.
Personally, I would like for him to take some time off. My thing is, like,
if I'm
DDP's getting screwed. Like, I think you beat Robert Whittaker.
He lost. He lost in this scenario. DDP, unfortunately.
I think you beat Robert Whittaker. That's a title fight. Like,
agreed.
That's the result.
1,000%.
Agreed.
And if they didn't have a show scheduled on September 9th in Sydney, if it was November 9th, he was getting the title fight.
Yes.
Unfortunately, he gets banged up. Now, should he suffer as a result of Sean winning? I mean, sometimes them's the breaks where they run it back and now you have to wait. But if it comes down to this scenario, Izzy takes time off, Khamzat Paulo winner, DDP. Shouldn't DDP get the nod over the Khamzat Paulo winner?
The word "should" always pops up in MMA.
I mean, but then you say, like, if Paulo knocks out Khamzat on October 21st, we're going to be sitting here on the 23rd and being like, Paulo Costa versus Sean Strickland. Be the fucking most insane title fight buildup of all time.
Or if Khamzat in his middleweight debut, absolutely UFC. No, actually, it's not even his middleweight debut, but going to middleweight, just absolutely smokes Paulo Costa. That momentum is going to be hard to top. DDP is unfortunate in the timing. Look, he was very fortunate in the timing when he beat Robert Whittaker, and there was going to be the opportunity to fight in Sydney. He was going to have to fight compromised if he wanted to do it, but he was fortunate in that was there for him. That was his if he wanted it. Now he might be unfortunate in the timing that it may have evaporated. There may just not be the runway. He may be at the back of the queue. There may be an opportunity where Israel's ahead of him. There may be an opportunity where the Khamzat Paulo winner is ahead of him. It's unfortunate, but I think no matter what, he should not have to fight again to get a title shot. Beating Robert Whittaker the way he beat Robert Whittaker, with Israel coming into the cage, there should be no world where he has to fight again to get a title shot. He might wait a while.
Even Dana White at the press conference before and after the fight said, "This is why you don't turn down fights," right? Like,
I know.
You could tell he's a little salty. Yeah,
they're not happy.
Okay, so
but look at Colby. Look at Colby, right? You can sit. You can sit. No. Yeah. I'm not saying the circumstances. What I'm saying is sometimes you can wait and you can get your opportunity. And that's what I would want to see. If DDP
what do you think the UFC does?
Khamzat Chimaev will fight for the title. I don't think you can
blow
it.
So you're saying Khamzat's winning?
Hamzat wins and fights for the title. I don't think you can blow it. Like, he fought a year ago, and that was a not competitive fight. It wasn't going to be competitive. Actually, I don't know anything about MMA anymore. I would have assumed that it wasn't going to be a competitive fight.
I'm actually surprised that you're so definitive in your take on that fight, on Paulo. By the way, Francis is winning on October 28th. I just want to let you know, based on the universe that we're living in. He's knocking him out. No, but
either one of those options is a very, very good option, especially with the character that Paulo Costa has turned into. But I think if Khamzat wins, you cannot pass on another opportunity. He's sat out for a year, and before that, was the Gilbert Burns fight. I believe it was in April of last year. He's been very inactive. You take advantage of that as quickly as you possibly can. That's what I would look to do if I were the UFC. And the same if Paulo wins. If Paulo wins, you have to kind of ride the train there. But I think there's a conversation between DDP
and then when does Izzy factor in?
Man, I don't know. And you like talk about screwing up some plans. He was talking last week at some of those press conferences about like how bad he wants to fight at UFC 300.
Sean Strickland, rematch UFC 300.
That's gonna be like April, late March of next year.
By the way, could you imagine a
Why
world where
not?
Sean Strickland is headlining UFC 300 as champion?
If we've
Please, that's crazy to think about.
if we've learned
Sport
anything
is
from this
insane.
event, he would be the A side of that. If we've learned anything from this event, he would be the one that people are coming to see, which is absolutely crazy, absolutely mind-blowing.
Oh, I know, but
Not
could you imagine saying this 2 months ago?
It'd be yeah, but it would be a massive, massive, massive fight.
What was it? Brennan Fitzgerald said first title defense in Washington, D.C., the nation's capital.
Yeah, sure.
What?
Yeah. I mean, really, it's insane to think about. It's also insane to think about, like, imagine if Izzy doesn't get a title shot off this. Like, do you book him as the headliner of a pay-per-view still? Is he the co-main event now? Or do we see Adesanya in a
I think
three-round
he's-
fight?
Fuck.
Like, you can't put him as the main event on a
Middleweight
fight
is
night.
such a mess. And what about Jared
No,
Cannonier?
no.
He just flew all the way to Australia.
Oh, yeah, to be the backup fighter. Yeah,
And not get
He has a
anything.
win. He has a win over Sean Strickland.
Yes.
85, he just got shaken up, man. It's crazy.
Imagine how Robert Whitaker feels right now.
Oh, my gosh.
Well, Whitaker's probably very happy he's got new life, right? Like,
Fuck, that DDP loss.
He's got new life, but yeah, he got his clock cleaned by DDP.
yes, but he was looking at a scenario where Israel was still champion and he was never getting back anywhere. Now, with Sean Strickland as champion, now he's got life at least. Now he's in the game again. But because he was on the sidelines, he was out of the game at this point. Is he losing reopens many options for him, even though DDP won.
I feel like for everyone at 85, it really.
Yeah, a lot.
Oh my God. Unless they go right back to the well, and it's almost like sometimes they try to correct the universe. And sometimes I think it's fun to just see how, how far the underdog could go with the belt, right? Like,
Yeah.
like imagine if Juliana had a couple other title defenses against, you know what I mean? And then I feel like it makes the rematch. Now there are some people that deserve it, right?
Look at Leon Usman. I mean, Leon beat him. Like, what if they go back out there and Strickland beats him again like that?
Here's what you have to consider though. From the UFC's business perspective, is Strickland versus DDP a bigger fight than Strickland versus Adesanya?
No.
Versus Strickland versus Hamzat? That
Strickland versus Hamzat is pretty damn big.
people
Strickland
don't
versus Hamzat is huge.
people don't think about the business of this, and that is what the UFC's primary. We know this at this point. The UFC's primary objective is to sell pay-per-views. It is not to make. There is no more meritocracy. There is no more should. There is no more earned. It is about what can we sell, and I just don't think DDP is the highest selling one. Now, I think it can sell. I think it would be a very good pay-per-view. I think that's a very good fight, but it might not be their first option, right? That might be the one they go to next. That might be the one that they go to third. But I think it's a great fight. I think there's no bad options here.
Whoever wins that Costa Hamzat fight is going to be calling for the belt. No
Absolutely.
doubt about it. Like, they're
Absolutely.
not going to want to take another fight before getting the belt.
I think there's some people that are licking their chops at the thought of fighting Sean Strickland for the title.
Some people, lots
All
of people.
All people.
Alex Pereira might be going back to 185.
No, they're friends now. They're friends
tweeted
now.
that.
Yeah, what a
friends
strange story arc that is as well.
They might be holding two.
Yeah,
two
are they
buddies
friends?
Might be holding.
Are they friends really?
It didn't he?
They trained together for a week in Connecticut.
But didn't he
I mean,
tweet?
he showed him some love afterwards.
Sure.
He-
you don't
didn't
think
he
he
tweet-
takes that fight?
But didn't he tweet he's not coming to 85 now
No, I know,
because of
I know.
that?
He's getting the 205 belt.
Yeah. Whew.
Remember when we
What
were
a time.
talking about a scenario in which Alex Pereira could be double champ? Who would have thought it would be like this route, right? Where he goes up to 205, wins the belt, and then comes back to 185, as opposed to winning the 85 belt initially back in November and then going up to 205 after all the craziness there. It's just a crazy thing to process. It's a
Yeah.
crazy thing to process.
The parity in this sport is unmatched.
We can do all the planning we want. What will ultimately happen is not dissimilar to how the end of this year has shaken out, not dissimilar to how the Sydney card has shaken out in the main event of it. Timing is everything. Whatever works for the timing is what the UFC is ultimately going to do. They're going to keep their schedule, and whoever's ready at that time, they're going to go to option 1. If they're not ready, they're going to go to option 2. And if they're not ready, they're going to go to option 3. And we're going to get a great fight no matter what, because there are no bad options at the top.
By the way, you know why you're 1,000% right with that take? Because that's just what happened on Saturday.
That's
It was
exactly what
the
happened.
reason why this fight happened was because of timing. Because there was a pay-per-view in Sydney that needed a main event.
This is what will happen.
It's crazy though. It's crazy. Like in what other world, in what other sports world does it go down this way, right?
None.
Sean Strickland's life has changed because Izzy had fought the top 5 guys. The next guy was injured, and they needed a main event in 2 months.
And Izzy
Stars
went to
aligned.
bat for him to get it.
Yeah,
And he took advantage of an opportunity.
crazy.
And now he's forever.
Yeah, forever.
UFC
You can never take
middleweight
that belt
champion.
away from him. man.
Forever.
You'll take the belt, but he'll still be former UFC champion Sean Strickland.
That is crazy. Forever.
Forever.
Yeah.
Forever.
Forever.
Think about Michael Bisping. Think about Michael Bisping and how his career changed.
Right.
He entered a different stratosphere. Sean Strickland is now there. Sean Strickland is in that combo, which is
When
absolutely
Sean
amazing.
Strickland goes and does his podcast with our next guest, the Man Dance, on the table will be the belt, and it's just like, yep, here he is, Sean Strickland, UFC champion.
Forever.
Thanks for watching. We appreciate it very much. Hey, if you like this video, give us the old thumbs up. Subscribe as well. You could get many more of these videos on the channel, so please do that. We would love you forever if you did so.